While Ms. Tate and I are out of the building, we are going to be focusing on solving the surface area and volume of square-based pyramids today. So when we're talking about square-based pyramids, we are talking about the shapes of the pyramids that we see in Egypt. So we have a pyramid shape at the top, and the base itself is made out of a square, which is where we get the square-based word from. So our base, we're finding out, is made out of a square, and the top of the shape is a pyramid. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out, what does surface area mean? When we're talking about surface area, we are simply talking about the area of the faces of the shape. So when we're talking about surface area, I want to know how much area covers this triangle, this side triangle, the back triangle, the right triangle, and then the square base. So the surface area is something that tells me how much cardboard I would need to build a shape like this. Or, for example, if I wanted to wrap a gift that was in this shape, how much wrapping paper I would need for a shape like this. So that is what surface area is. The next word we're going to talk about is volume. And volume is the space inside of a 3D shape. So the volume is a space inside of the 3D shape. So that says, if I were to fill this pyramid with water, how much water could I fill up inside this pyramid? You'll see volume on things like water bottles. So a water bottle is an 8 fluid ounce volume for water. That means there are 8 fluid ounces of water inside of that water bottle. All right. We're going to get started by looking at our 2 formulas here. We have 2 new formulas today. One is for surface area and one is for volume. Again, when we're talking about surface area, we're talking about how much space is on the outside of the shape. When we're talking about volume, we're talking about how much space goes inside the shape. How much can you fill the shape up with? So, the great thing about math is when we're learning math and we give a variable a name. For example, let's imagine we're talking about the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. We know that b, little b, is always base. We know that h is always going to be height, and we know that a will always equal area. That will travel with you forever. Every time you see a lowercase b, it will always stand for base, and every time you see a lowercase h, it will stand for height. But we have new letters in our formula today that we're going to be taking a look at. Before we dive into the new letters, we want to look at the letters that we have. We have a cursive L, a lowercase p, an uppercase B, another uppercase B, and an H. So let's start off with filling in some letters that we already know. We already know lowercase h, right? H, like we found before in our area of a triangle formula, H stands for height. That is exactly the same as it always has been. So when we're talking about height of a shape, it's just like when you go to the doctor's office and we say, all right, we're going to measure you. We're going to measure you from the middle of your feet all the way to the tippy top of your head. So our height is exactly the same in our pyramid. It is the middle of the shape all the way to the tippy top. The next letter we already know is P, but we haven't seen it in this way yet. P in these formulas stands for perimeter of base. So what is the perimeter of our base? The way we're going to find the perimeter of our base is we're going to ask ourselves, how far do I have to walk around the front side, the right side, the back side, and the left side of our shape back to our starting point. So we're going to be adding up the lengths of each of these sides of our square base, of our pyramid. Now we're going to get into some new letters that we haven't seen before. The first one is this curly L. This curly L is slant height. The slant height can be found as the slanted side of our triangle. It is the height of the slanted side. So before, when you go to the doctor's office and they're measuring your height, it's from the middle of your feet to the middle of your noggin. The slant height is if you imagine they stick the tape measure under your foot and they measure up the side of your legs, around the side of your arm, to your neck, around your ear, and all your hair up to the top of your head. That's what the slant height is. It is what is the side height of the object. The last letter we have is this big B. Now we've seen little b before over here in base, but now we're talking big B. Big B stands for the area of the base. When we're talking about the area of the base, we want to know what is the length times the width of the base. Now, like I said before, once we give a letter or a variable a definition, it's going to stay that way forever. So our big B down here also stands for area of base. Now I'm going to take a second here and I'm going to pull out my formula sheet so you guys can take a look and we can see where the shape is on our formula sheet. When I look at my formula sheet, I see that my pyramid is right here. It is the third shape on the second row. I see my volume formula starts with V, and I see my surface area formula starts with SA for surface area. If I get confused and stuck and don't know where some of these letters stand for, I see the L over here and this L here. That means that if I'm looking for this L, I know where on my shape to find it. It is a slant height. If I'm looking for the H and I don't know how to find the H, on my formula sheet it shows me the H is the number from the bottom to the top. So your formula sheet can really help you to decipher these shapes as you're working through them if you don't know where to find your variables and your numbers. All right, we are going to head back into our notes and solve this first problem together. When we are doing these types of problems, there are 4 things that I would like to see on your paper. I'm going to write them down here and I'll put them to the side. The first thing I want to see is the formula. I want to make sure we are writing down the correct formula in the correct box. So are we solving surface area or are we solving for volume? The second thing we want to find are the variables. We want to make sure that we list out every single variable in our formula and that we're finding the value that goes along with it. The third thing we're going to write is our equation. So taking the value of the variables and plugging them back into the formula. And the last thing is going to be our answer. You might notice there's something missing in between our equation and our answer, and that is our work. Our work is going to be done using Desmos. So we aren't going to need to show our math. We are instead going to be doing our math on Desmos, and we're going to use that as our tool today. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this first problem. The first problem is asking for surface area. We need to write our formula down first. I'm looking above, and I see that my surface area formula is 1/2 slant height times perimeter of base plus big B, which is area of base. It's really important to make sure that you have big B here and not little b, because as we said before, they mean completely different things now. All right, the next question we're going to solve asks us to find the volume. So I'm going to look above and write the formula for my volume. That is 1/3 big B H. All right, there's my formulas. We've done the first part. The second part is we need to find all of our variables. So this handout does a really good job explaining how to find all the variables. But if you remember, I'm going to go back up to my area of a triangle example. We would write out our formula, and then I would ask you, what does B equal and what does H equal? That's what I'm looking for when we're talking about what the variables are. This worksheet does a good job breaking it out for you, but that's really what I'm looking for there, is what the variable in each formula stands for. So let's start with big B. Remember, big B stands for area of base. The way that we're going to find our area of base is we are going to take the front side multiplied by the side. So we're going to take, in this example, 12 is the length of my front and multiply it by itself. So we're going to take 12 times 12, and that equals 144. So that's our area of base. The next thing we're going to find is our slant height. Remember, our slant height is the number that is across the leaning side of our pyramid. And in this example, I see my slant height has an arrow pointing to it that says 10. The next thing we are going to find is our perimeter of base. And remember, our perimeter of base is we're going to count like we're walking around the entire shape. So, if I walk across the front side, I walk 12. The right side is 12. The back side is 12. And the left side is 12. And when I add all those together, I get 48. The final variable we need to find in this example is our height. When we find our height, we know we're looking from the very top to the very middle bottom. And in this example, we find that our height is 8. So now we've written down all of our variables. So we've done our formula piece and our variables. Now we need to do our equation. What we're going to do is we are going to take our letters and replace them with the numbers that are next to them. So in surface area, it says 1/2. L is slant height, so times 10. Then it has P, which is perimeter of base, which we found is 48, plus big B, which we found is 144. We're going to stop there for right now. Let's do the same thing for volume. Volume, it's 1/3 times big B, which is 144, times H, which is 8. All right. I'm going to tell you the answer to this one, and then I will show you how to solve in just a moment. The answer for this one is the surface area is 384 and the volume is also 384. Now, your surface area and your volume will not always be the same. Generally, they are not the same. However, this is a wonky problem where the math just happens to work out that way. I'm going to show you in just a second how to solve this on Desmos and how you're going to show your work on a calculator. Before I do that, though, we are going to do all the steps in the next problem. So let's go ahead and look at the second problem on our worksheet. On the second problem on our worksheet, we see another surface area and another volume question. So we're going to start back at the top of our list. The first thing we do is write down our formulas. So you can either look on your formula sheet or you can look at the top of your worksheet and find the formula for your surface area and write that down. We get 1/2 slant height times perimeter of base plus area of base. We're also being asked to find the volume. So you can either look on your formula sheet or at the top of this worksheet, and we find the formula for volume is 1/3 times the area of base times the height. We've got our formulas done. The next thing we need to do is solve for our variables or find our variables. Big B is area of base, so we are going to look at what is the front times itself. So we're going to take 30 times 30. I know that because that is the length of my base, and 30 times 30 gives us 900. The next thing we're going to find is our slant height. Remember, our slant height is the side, the height of the side of the triangle. We get 17 for that number on our square base pyramid. Then we have P, and lowercase p stands for perimeter of base. So we're going to imagine that we're walking around the outside of this entire shape. So we're going to walk 30 plus 30 plus 30 plus 30 gives us 120. And the last variable we have is H. H stands for height. Height is smack dab in the center, so my H is 8. All right, now we are going to do the equation. We've done the formula, we've done the variables, now we're going to do the equation part. So the equation, we're going to take the numbers that we found and plug them in. So in surface area, we get 1/2. My slant height is 17. My perimeter of base is 120. And my area of base is 900. We're going to do the same thing for our volume. We're going to do 1/3 times the area of base, which is 900, times the height, which is 8. Now, we are going to go over and look into how we are going to solve this in Desmos. So when I go to Desmos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my calculator and make sure it's entirely cleared out. Where's my calculator? All right. We are going to type in the formulas that we're going to be needing for these problems. The way I like to type in the formulas is I always like to do surface area first and then volume, because they go in alphabetical order. That way you can find both answers and then you'll have both numbers in front of you ready to go. So for surface area, I'm going to type in 1/2. Slant height is L, that's just the L button on your calculator, P plus big B. Then we have volume, and for volume, I'm going to type in 1/3, big B, 1/3, big B, H. So there's my formula. If you notice, Desmos is giving us error signs right now because we don't have answers in. We haven't told Desmos what any of these letters stand for. So we're just simply waiting until we tell Desmos what the letters stand for. So let's start with our slant height. We're going to let's back up. We're going to look at these variables that we have and put them in order as we see them. So we're going to do big B, tell big B equals 900. The next one we have is L equals 17. P equals 120. And H equals 8. Now we've told Desmos what all of our answers are, or what all of our variables are. So now we should be able to scroll up and be able to find our answers. So I see 1920 and 2400. I know that 1920, I'm going to scroll this over here, 1920 is going to be my surface area because I put it in first, and S comes before V in the alphabet, and this formula matches the formula at the top of my calculator. So I know that this is going to be 1920. Additionally, I found my other volume down here because my volume was my second formula I put in. My formula for volume matches my formula for volume on my worksheet. So I know this answer is 2400. Now we're going to go back to this top one again and check our answers that we got for 384. I'm not going to delete the entire thing. I'm just simply going to change the numbers that I plugged in for my variables. So we're going to look at big B on this top one here was 144. So plug in 144. The slant height for my top number was 10, so replace 17 with 10. The perimeter of base for my top problem was 48, and the height remained 8. So when I scroll up, if you notice, we get my surface area is 384, and my volume is 384. That's how we found our answers. So you're not going to be needing to show your work and every single multiplication and addition step in this process. But what you are going to need to be doing is showing these 4 steps. You're going to need to show the formula, the variables, the equation. Then you're going to type everything into Desmos to get your answer.